Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Nick Blumberg. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. Here's what we're looking at. Chicago's Inspector General Deborah Witzburg reflects on her tenure and shares her thoughts on the work ahead. How much have Chicago taxpayers spent on police misconduct lawsuits so far this year?
In this play, we're interrogating what we believe.
Oscar-winning playwright Tarell Alvin McCraney on his latest production, commissioned for Steppenwolf Theater's 50th anniversary.
I think it's really critical that we create opportunities for young women.
And meet the women powering their own mechanic shop. First off tonight, as Chicago's top watchdog prepares to step down, she leaves behind a series of sharp critiques of police oversight and accountability, including new findings that raise concerns about how misconduct is investigated and documented within the Chicago Police Department. Inspector General Deborah Witzburg's departure comes at a pivotal moment as the city faces ongoing scrutiny under the federal consent decree and questions about whether reforms are on track. And joining us is Deborah Witzburg, Inspector General for the City of Chicago. Thanks for coming back on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So you've often said Chicago operates at a deficit of legitimacy and that a lot of your work was aimed at correcting that imbalance. How do you evaluate the progress that you made?
This is something I worry about a lot, frankly. The fact that Chicago earns every bit of its reputation, that has been generations in the making, and we are not going to fix what's wrong with city government while any one of us is here. And so in that world where there is no finish line in sight, mile markers are hard come by. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking and worrying about this question of how we know if we are making progress, how we know if it's working. I think that we have made progress. I think that we have held people in power to account in a way that historically didn't happen, and I think that matters to people. I'm also really encouraged by the fact that we get more intakes. We hear from more Chicagoans more often than the office ever has before. So we get, in any one quarter, we get between 2,000 and 4,000 intakes, and that number has gone up really consistently over time. I think that's a good news story. I don't think that's because more things are going wrong in the city of Chicago. I think that's because more people know who we are and what we do and where to find us. And maybe most importantly, I think that more people are willing to believe that if something goes wrong in the city, there's someone who will listen and can help.
Yeah.
So I think we've made some progress. I also think there's a great deal left to do.
Well, your time in the Inspector General's office, it spanned 3 mayoral administrations. Mayor Lori Lightfoot said she wanted an IG who would stay in her lane. You've called Mayor Johnson's administration reflexively hostile to oversight. Do you think that friction was because of those mayors specifically, or is it more so a trait among executives to resist that oversight?
There's certainly some structural tension between an IG and the entity they oversee. If in this situation, if a mayor felt entirely warm and fuzzy about the Office of Inspector General, we wouldn't be doing our job. That said, I think there's a great deal of room for improvement, to say the least, in the city's cooperation with oversight.
What does that cooperation look like? I mean, what do you think sort of the best case of a working relationship between an IG's office and a mayoral administration, a city hall, should be like?
Well, I think I've given that some thought. And I will say, one of the things I'm proudest of about this term is that we have built very productive, very positive working relationships with many people and many departments across city government. That's not to say that everybody's glad to see us coming or agrees with us. In fact, so often not. But we have come to a place with a lot of people in city government where I think there's a shared recognition that if we are not all pulling in generally the same direction, if we are not all working in the direction of building a government that more closely resembles the one Chicagoans deserve, then at least some of us are in the wrong line of work. And so I actually think there are a lot of models for what a good and productive relationship can look like when everybody recognizes the value, albeit sometimes uncomfortable, of effective and independent oversight.
You mentioned Chicago's not always so great reputation when it comes to corruption. You've said before that the high-profile convictions of folks like former Alderman Ed Burke, former House Speaker Michael Madigan, that they should have been a catalyst for systemic reform. I think a lot of folks would agree that that hasn't necessarily happened. Do you think that was a missed chance there?
I think that Chicago has historically done a lot of public policy by crisis response. I think much of what we've seen as we look back over history in the city is we've seen efforts at various kinds of reform, including police and public safety reform, which have been generated in the wake of a crisis. I think the release of the Laquan McDonald video was one of those catalyst events. I think the murder of George Floyd was another, again, on the public safety front. And so I think some of these catalyst events open this window of opportunity. And we certainly have not seized all of those opportunities.
You know, you announced that you wouldn't seek a second term after the city council expanded the IG's power, in part to block the city's top lawyer from stepping in when there were investigations that risked embarrassment or political consequences. But you told the city council today the law department has not complied with those new rules. Are you concerned the mayor might pick a successor who won't as aggressively challenge his administration on that issue and on others?
I think the process for the selection of a new inspector general is one that is thoughtfully built to guard against the risk that not just this mayor, but any mayor might select someone who would be sort of favorable to them under all circumstances. And so, you know, I believe in that process. I appreciate the folks who've been working on it. I think we should all of us who have a stake in a more accountable, more effective government should be watching that process and its outcome closely.
Yeah, as you said, not necessarily a good fit for someone who has a warm and fuzzy relationship with the fifth floor. All right, well, let's take a look at some findings from your office's report that came out last week. In one instance, it says CPD leadership consistently removed police powers when officers were arrested, but not always when they were accused of other serious misconduct. That CPD doesn't track cases where officers were considered but not ultimately stripped of their police powers. I also found that Black and Latino male officers were disproportionately stripped of police powers. What do you think CPD needs to do to make things right in these instances?
The questions around whether and when someone's police powers are removed while a misconduct investigation is pending is part of a really important set of questions that we have looked at around the transparency and robustness of Chicago's police disciplinary system. If we are ever going to make any progress in fostering public trust in policing, we need a disciplinary system in which both members of the public and members of the department have reason to be confident. Things go wrong in law enforcement. Even good law enforcement is messy and difficult work, and we need to have a system in place to deal with things that go wrong. And so this work is part of that larger view. And we found here, as you say, we found some inconsistencies in practice, and we found kind of minimal record keeping for how these decisions get made about whether and when to remove police powers. In order for us or anyone else, even the department itself, to be able to assess whether those decisions are being made in a fair and consistent manner, we need more information about the decision-making process. So that's the spirit of the recommendations we made to the Chicago Police Department, to which the department was, I think, very receptive.
Well, and speaking to that issue, I mean, currently the IG's role is to make those policy recommendations, to suggest fixes to city agencies, departments, but doesn't necessarily have the authority to force officials to act. Do you think that should change?
Well, we have recommendation-making authority, as you say, and city departments, including the Chicago Police Department, are obligated to respond to our recommendations, and then we kind of publish that whole conversation. That's designed to happen in the light of day. We conduct the public's business in public. And, you know, I think on any one recommendation, any one question, there is sometimes some room for good faith disagreement, and I always appreciate those engagements and those conversations with city departments. This is an opportunity for public scrutiny and for legislative oversight when city departments do not accept our recommendations.
And as you said, the public at least is more interested in reporting things to you, so hopefully that scrutiny is a piece of that as well. Yes. The latest report also examined a crash where a Chicago Fire Department employee struck and killed someone while behind the wheel. You found responding officers and supervisors failed to take key investigative steps. Do you think those findings point to a training issue? Is there a culture problem? Is it a bit of both, perhaps?
I think it's really hard to tell, and that's really what matters in that case. It's really hard to tell what happened in this underlying incident because critical information was never collected, and that's what drives our observations about the shortcomings in that death investigation.
You've warned that the consent decree aimed at reforming Chicago Police Department is in danger of failing, and said that it hasn't yet resulted in meaningful change for Chicagoans, many of whom have had a fraught relationship with the department for decades. Who do you think is responsible for that potential failure? Where should we be looking?
Well, I think that's a difficult question. We are 7 years in to Chicago's consent decree. And the observation I've made before is that if you're riding your bicycle too slowly, it tips over. And that's, I think, that's the danger here, that's the risk. I think it's important to say that the Chicago Police Department's current leadership has presided over a sharp increase in compliance efforts with the consent decree, and that's really important to say. Meaningful public safety reform, which happens on the street and not on the paper,
right,
is an effort which goes beyond the four walls of the police department. That is an effort that needs to be appropriately resourced, appropriately supported by other city departments. That's an all-hands-on-deck endeavor.
And what do you think needs to be done, in that all-hands-on-deck endeavor to prevent the reform effort from collapsing?
Reform takes resources. And so if we're going to get the work done of complying with the consent decree and meeting the city's other reform mandates, there have to be people in place to do that work, and they need appropriate resources to do it.
And do you feel like those are all necessarily in place right now?
I think, we've seen in the last couple of budget cycles a lot of conversation about this. Do we have the right number of positions in reform-focused jobs? Do we have people in those positions, or are they vacant? And what that kind of workforce allocation looks like. I think all those are important questions.
All right. Well, your tenure is up at the end of the month. Do you know what's next for you?
It's up at the end of next week.
Next week, excuse me.
Yes, I know. Just
end of the month.
That's right, counting the days. I have spent an entire career in government service. It's been a tremendous privilege to work in the public service. And I will steal from Rahm Emanuel when I say that I'm not done with public service, and I hope public service isn't done with me.
All right, we've got just about 30 seconds left. What piece of advice might you pass along to your successor, whoever that should be?
Good luck. No, I think the best piece of advice I would offer is to pick your battles and win the ones you pick.
All right, Deborah Witzburg, congratulations on 10 years with the office, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Up next, how much have Chicago taxpayers spent on police misconduct lawsuits so far this year? Heather Sharon has an answer to that right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago taxpayers paid more than $175 million to resolve lawsuits alleging Chicago police officers committed a wide range of misconduct. That's according to a WTTW News analysis from the first 4 months of the year. Our Heather Sharon joins us now from City Hall with more. So, Heather, remind us how much money the city's 2026 budget set aside to resolve these lawsuits.
So the city council set aside just $82.5 million to resolve these lawsuits, which have become a source of increasing pressure on the city's already cash-strapped finances. They did authorize officials to borrow an additional $283 million, acknowledging that the cost of these lawsuits has grown significantly. Between 2024 and 2025, the cost to resolve police misconduct lawsuits doubled, and there's no doubt that 2026 will set a new record once again.
So the latest massive settlement, it'll go to a man who spent 19 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. How much is the city going to pay him?
Carl Reed will get $9.5 million after he spent, as you said, nearly 2 decades in prison, convicted of murdering his neighbor back in 2001. Now, there's no physical evidence that ever tied Reed to the murder, and the police detective who helped convict him has been found by the Illinois Torture Justice Commission to have abused other suspects in Chicago police custody.
And do we have any sense of how much more the city will spend to resolve police misconduct lawsuits in the coming months?
We don't. A lot of the final tally will depend on what juries do in the coming months, but we do know it will cost at least another $45 million, and that will go to more than 200 people who spent decades in prison saying after they said that they were convicted on false evidence from now convicted former Sergeant Ronald Watts. As part of a global settlement approved by the City Council last year, in all, the city will pay $90 million to those men and women. The city's paid just half of that in January, so they've got a bit more to go.
Yeah, a long time coming, that settlement. All right, Heather Sharon, thanks very much.
Thanks, Nick.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. A son lost in a clash with the police, a huge cash settlement on the table, and a father torn between staying put in Chicago or starting anew. That all-too-real dilemma is what underpins the play Windfall, a new work written by Oscar-winning Steppenwolf ensemble member Tarell Alvin McCraney. And it's a work that McCraney says he didn't take on lightly.
It says that someone who lived here has had a criminal record?
I did stupid, but it wasn't criminal.
Windfall was commissioned as part of Steppenwolf Theater's 50th anniversary season. And it's the first play written specifically for its ensemble theater, with the audience seated in the round, an immersive experience that befits the play's emotional weight.
Take the money.
It's blood money, though.
It's all blood money.
Cast member Glenn Davis is also Steppenwolf's co-artistic director, along with Audrey Francis.
Usually actors don't run theater companies. I think here at Steppenwolf, because it's an ensemble theater made up mostly of actors, we also have directors, writers, but we started as an acting company, and that very much still is our identity today.
Among the cast, Davis, Alana Arenas, and John Michael Hill, all of whom appeared in 2024's Purpose, which opened at Steppenwolf and eventually moved to Broadway, winning the 2025 Tony for Best Play.
The secret weapon of Steppenwolf, I often say, is the fact that you have these relationships that have traversed time and space over so many years.
Including Davis's relationship with fellow ensemble member and Windfall playwright Tarell Alvin McCraney.
Not only my best friend, but also one of the great dramatists of his generation.
I often talk about the spiritual aspects of theater, that we come into a room and we believe together, and therefore an act of faith is happening. In this play, we're interrogating what we believe, and we believe as a society more than anything that money cures more things than we'd like to admit.
Glenn Davis told us that this was the play you said you were most afraid to write, most anxious about. Why was that?
Money is the thing that some people say the root of all evil is based on, that wars are started about. And here I was wanting to make a play about the ways in which money are attributed to black bodies, particularly those who are harmed by the city.
The challenging material appealed to longtime New York-based actor Michael Potts, who's making his Steppenwolf debut.
I'd wanted to work here for a very, very long time. I was wondering why I hadn't been asked.
Take the money. That money.
Whatever it is, it ain't enough.
What drew you to this role?
I love puzzles, and I love this kind of puzzle he's created about this character, about these characters, and this story, and how it fits in the human experience.
The play is infused with the joy of community, the joy of tackling something together.
Actor Alana Arenas has known McCraney since high school and an arts community center in Miami. They both went on to study at DePaul, where they met Glenn Davis.
Maybe more than once, our directors looked at us and had to say, do I have to separate you? Because there's a lot of playfulness in the room, but it's cozy, you know, like a old comforting sweater.
As I said, we have not done anything wrong and do not admit to doing anything wrong.
Tarell is very masterful in knowing that we need to have a serious conversation, but choosing a tone that makes it palatable for us to all engage.
Steppenwolf has previously staged several of McCraney's works. He's also well known as the writer of the Oscar-winning film Moonlight, adapted from one of his own plays. We just saw Ryan Coogler join a club that you're a part of Black artists recognized with a screenplay Oscar. What did it feel like to see him up there on that stage?
Oh man, I might cry. Oh. Yeah, it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary, and the way in which he holds his community so close, and that he's a leader in the community, it was astonishing to see.
As Steppenwolf marks its 50th season, the artists working on Windfall are cognizant of the history they're carrying on and helping write.
The initial group of ensemble members who started in the mid-70s, they've played husband and wife, brother and sister, brother and brother, father, son, mother, daughter, all the things over 50 years now. And so to be able to know someone that well is a gift.
The play is directed by Awoyi Timpo and also features ensemble member Namir Smallwood, who just appeared in Bug on Broadway with Carrie Coon. Windfall's grand opening is on Sunday. It begins its regular run on Tuesday and is scheduled to run through May 31st. Up next, meet the women behind a Chicago repair shop looking to make car care more inclusive.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
In Ravenswood, a new kind of mechanic shop is breaking the mold. Joanna Hernandez recently stopped by to see how the garage is opening its doors to help more women enter the industry. Here's another look.
Ever pop the hood of your car and have no idea what you're looking at? For some drivers, walking into a mechanic shop can feel intimidating.
It's just not a safe environment, a really included space when somebody kind of talks in vehicle jargon and makes it way overcomplicated when it's actually really simple. Do you need this or do you not?
Meet Ray Chafin. She's the lead mechanic at Mechanista, a nonprofit repair shop aimed at making auto care more inclusive for women and non-binary folks.
The whole time in the military, I was the only female. It wasn't until right before I actually retired out that I got to train my first female in this job. You can pull out and check it.
It's not that bad.
So this actually looks pretty new.
Chafin spent nearly a decade in the Air Force as a heavy mobile equipment mechanic. She knows her way around cars.
I was always working with my hands. I was probably handed some tool at the age of 2 and was like, go play with this outside, take it apart, put it back together. And then while you're checking the level, also checking the fluid, making sure that it looks clean, it's not burnt.
2% of all auto mechanics are women, and it's a problem because we have all of these openings everywhere.
Lisa Thompson is the founder of Mechanista, an idea she says came after research and conversation with people in the industry. That's when she first heard about the 2% problem.
And so I said, oh, well, what are you doing? Like, what are some of the things that people are doing to try to solve this 2% problem? And he said, I don't really think that anyone's doing anything about it. So I remember I told my husband, I was like, I think I have to do this. I think I have to start a program for this.
And the garage doesn't look like an ordinary mechanic shop.
I wanted this space to look like someplace I would feel comfortable curling up with a book and a cup of coffee.
The auto shop has plenty of space for parents to bring their kids or anyone wanting to get some work done while their car is being serviced.
I want them to walk out feeling like, wow, that was fun, that was a pleasant hour, and I know what's going on with my car.
It could possibly just be your belt if it's getting worn like that.
Besides offering car services, Thompson says they are developing a 12-week apprentice program for ages 16 to 24, a chance for girls and non-binary people to jump into a career in the automotive industry.
I think it's really critical that we create opportunities for young women to work in a garage and to learn in a place that they feel safe, that they feel included, that they feel is equitable, because otherwise they may not stay in the field.
And you never want to open that when a car is just pulled in here, because pressurized and very hot. I think I'm getting an opportunity to create that safe space and that opportunity to give people the confidence and show them that we can do this. We are so capable as human beings, but absolutely as women, women plus.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Joanna Hernandez.
Mechanista also hosts occasional workshops where people can learn the basics of car care. For more on that and how to make an appointment, you can visit our website. And that's our show for this Thursday night. You can stream Chicago Tonight on our WTTW YouTube channel every evening and catch up on any programs you may have missed. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Week in Review. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe. Good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is a multilingual law firm, providing translators for a variety of languages.